Welcome to Teach the Table. Today we're going to be talking about a game called San Juan. Now, if you've ever played Puerto Rico, it's going to look pretty similar to you. There's a reason for that, San Juan being the capital of Puerto Rico. Very similar game. You can see the boxes actually look pretty similar too. And as you might guess, this is kind of a lighter, simpler, card-based version of the same game, essentially. So let's set it up and show you how it goes. So this is a 4-player setup of San Juan. Each player is going to have 4 cards in their hand that they start with. They're going to keep those secret from the other players, as well as they'll start with 1 indigo plant building in front of them. Now they can build up to 12 buildings here in front of each player. They have they call a tableau, is one of those board game words that you don't use in real life, or at least I don't. And they're going to be able to play more buildings as the game progresses. On the bottom of each building card is how many victory points it's worth. And then once that 12th building is built, we total up the number of points, and whoever has the most points ends up being the winner. Go figure. So there's 2 different types of buildings in the deck. There are buildings that produce sorts of goods, like this indigo plant will produce 1 indigo. And then there's these violet buildings that have special functions, either special rules that you can sort of bend the rules of the game to your will, or some of them are these value 6 buildings, which all have question mark victory points at the bottom, and those are bonus points that you get based on meeting some special function throughout the game. One way that this game is different than Puerto Rico, and pretty unique, is that these cards are not only the buildings that you see on the face of them, but if they are upside down, they actually can be used to represent goods that you can produce. But if you produced a good, it actually comes from the deck, not from your hand. It just goes on like that. And they can also be used to discard face down on the table to represent money. So if you wanted to build a building, like let's say you wanted to build this sugar mill, which would cost you 2, you would just discard 2 of your cards and you could build it. So I'll just go through the roles each individually very briefly. These are all going to look really familiar if you've played Puerto Rico, starting with the builder. So the builder is the one that lets you build buildings. So you just pay the costs that are on the tops of the buildings, and the cost would be discarded cards. The privilege for the person who chose this is that they get a discount. So they pay 1 less for building those buildings. So they would do it, and then it goes to the next player. They all do that. And then the next player gets to choose a role. The next role will be the producer. So like I already kind of talked about, you can produce goods on 1 of your buildings. The advantage for you if you chose this is that you can produce an additional good. So normally you can only produce 1 on 1 at a time, but if you chose this role, then you can actually do up to 2. Trading works a little bit different in this game than in Puerto Rico. Instead of having a trading house where there's only 4 spots and it's pretty tightly guarded, this game has these little trading tiles. So these actually show each type of good represented by a color and then what the value of that good is. So the market actually fluctuates in this game. These are kind of drawn at random, but they can be worth different amounts of points. Different goods are worth different amounts throughout the game. So if you're really paying attention, you can kind of remember, because how it works is they're all going to be upside down. You flip the first one when someone does trading, and then once that's done, it goes on the bottom. So if you're really paying attention or card counting, then you can kind of remember based on how many tradings we've had, then maybe you think this one's coming up and you could sell a certain good at a better value. The benefit for the person who chooses the trader is that they can sell up to 2 goods, whereas normally the normal action of this is just to sell 1. So you could say, let's say this was the market at that point, and since sugar is worth 2 and indigo is worth 1, I could sell my sugar for 2, which you would get 2 cards. And if you chose the trader phase, you could also sell your indigo for 1 additional card. So as you can probably tell at this point, cards, since they are buildings as well as your money that you spend you run out of cards pretty quickly. So cards are a commodity that you really want. So in this game we have another role called a counselor. And this is not one that's in Puerto Rico, but what you can do is it actually allows you to get more cards into your hand. So the normal action is you would choose 2 cards and the person gets to keep one of them. So they discard one and they keep one in their hand. The privilege is that you get to draw an additional 3 cards. So you get to see 5 cards, but you still just get to keep one of those. And then the last role, which I kind of discussed, is the prospector, which just gets you 1 additional card, only for the person who chose that role. So after everyone's had a chance to choose a role, and all the role cards go back on the table, this governor tile gets passed to the player on the left. Now, not only does that mean that player gets to start the next round and choose the next role, but they also have to discard cards if they have more than 7 cards. So there's a hand limit of 7 cards in this game, unless you have a building that gives you an ability to have more than that. So you can't have more than 7 cards in your hand at the end of that section. So throughout the game you could have as many cards as you want, but once that governor tile gets passed, you have to discard down to 7 cards. The game of San Juan ends immediately at the end of a builder phase, where any player has built their 12th building. So you have sort of an imaginary 12 spots in front of each person, and once you filled up that 12th spot, everyone gets to go around for that round, just that builder round, so everyone gets a chance to build a building, but then the game immediately ends. So that's how you play San Juan. It's sort of a simpler version of Puerto Rico. You don't necessarily have to have played Puerto Rico to put this on the table. It's a little bit easier, probably easier for children or for people new to gaming to learn. It's not as many bits and pieces and things to keep track of on the board and move around as with Puerto Rico. Being card-based, it's easier to travel with. We played this in pubs and bars, and it travels really well. Even at restaurants you could put it down, since it's basically just cards and a few little bits of cardboard, but it doesn't take up a lot of space. The recommended age range on this is a little bit younger than Puerto Rico, so that's an advantage. However, this doesn't play as many people. This only plays 2 to 4 people, doesn't play up to 5 like Puerto Rico. But a 5-player game of Puerto Rico can take a little bit longer than I have the patience for. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this rules video, and I will see you next time. And points are scored.